How's your week? If it was bad, it's over. So that's one of the beautiful things about the Sabbath. God gives us a break from the past and an introduction into the future, where he desires us to rest in the salvation that he's provided for us. I don't know if you noticed that out in the foyer earlier, there's some young folks out there that were distributing these bags here. I would encourage you to grab one per family at least. These are just some basic, kind of some comfort items for folks that, you know, if you see somebody that's obviously maybe homeless or is just having some, you know, they're just out asking for a little bit of assistance or something like that, this is something to provide. It's just a small thing. It's not a big thing, obviously. But we want to do, and Revive Community Care wants to do as much as it possibly can to just provide a little bit of relief. Maybe you can't relieve completely somebody's circumstances, but a little bit. You know, it's kind of like evidenced by this last Wednesday. I think they distributed somewhere over 500 families came through Revive Community Care. And yeah, absolutely, and that was facilitated by students from Burton Academy, came over and packed Thanksgiving boxes for this next week and everything. And that is just a drop in the bucket for needs in the community, but we want to do whatever we can, okay? We want to just do whatever we can. While I was in the back, I had to laugh because I remembered something that happened earlier this week with one of our church secretaries answered the phone, and this lady just randomly called the church, and she said, well, what kind of church are you? Okay, like, I don't know, what kind of church are we? Well, we're a church. Well, yeah, but what do you do there? What kind of church are you? And it was, it's kind of like that's a very vague question, like, what kind of human being are you? I don't know. 2 eyes and nose, ear, I don't know. And then, and get this. So then the question is, well, do you have drums on your stage? And, the answer was, why, yes. To which they responded, well, I know what kind of church you are then. I thought, interesting. It's kind of a crystal ball. This right here, this is what we are. Not the church that gave out 500 boxes of food to the community. Not the church that's trying to provide, comfort kits to strangers. Not the church that seems to, sort of reflect every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. Not a church that has people that are in recovery. Not a church that has people that have gone through trauma. But we're a drum church. For whatever that means. So I'm thinking we need a second set of drums. So, if that's what we get, because technically, you do realize we have the drum is a percussion instrument, but we have like 1,000-pound percussion instrument. You know that, right? It's called a piano. Percussion, 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 percussion. Evil, good. Unholy, righteous. Delusional. But in any case, I don't sweat. I've been here long enough now. I don't sweat that kind of stuff anymore. But every now and then, I was just in the back and I was watching Sean play the drums and I was just laughing to myself, thinking about, wow, okay. If you don't like drums, hey, come to first service. That's how it works out, it's not that the people in first service don't like drums. We just don't use them that often. Anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. It's therapeutic for me to get this stuff out, We've been going through this series, crazy Adventist stuff. And I know for us, because a lot of this is very familiar to us, it may not seem all that crazy, all that out of the norm. But trust me, when you start kind of roaming the landscape of modern American Christianity, you find that, we're kind of outliers in some of these things. One of these things, obviously, as from the sermon title here, the clean feet, clean hearts. You know, most of you who've been around Adventist for a while, you know that we practice the foot washing always in association with the communion service. And there's a reason for that. And I'd like to go into that, but I want to kind of take a different angle at it. Not going to go to the New Testament where it was established there by Jesus plainly in the hours just before his betrayal and condemnation and crucifixion, but to a story that I think kind of gives us a little bit of a theological framework in which to look at it from. And that is taken from the book of 2 Kings chapter 5, beginning in verse 1. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. A couple things just to pay attention to there. This was a man who was not a Jew, he was not an Israelite, he was not a Hebrew, he was not the made people, but yet God had used him in behalf of Syria, a pagan nation. See, that's one of the things that people are kind of confused about, is that God is in the business of blessing all of humanity, okay? It's not just the nations that self-identify as Christian that God is seeking to redeem. He is working across the planet. That's why the gospel commission is given to go to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. And so it says here, he was also a mighty man of valor. A mighty man of valor. And in the Hebrew, it's a term that is specifically applied to people that have status when it comes to being warriors. This dude was jacked. He was a warrior. And not just any old run-of-the-mill warrior. He was the best of the best of the best of the best. And he was a leper. That little tagline there on the end. Here was a man who had all sorts of competencies. He had risen to the highest level of his profession. It was recognized by his nation, and it was recognized by the nations around him that he had subjugated through his skill and ability as a military leader. He was at the top of his game. Isn't that what everybody strives for? I mean, has it not been instilled in you and me and all of us since we were very little that what you want to do is to strive to be number one? Well, he had arrived. But he had that little asterisk by his name. He was a leper. If you can think about your own life, all of your accomplishments, your successes, the things that you have given your level best for and you've achieved, isn't there always just a little asterisk somewhere? Almost like a pebble in your shoe that you just can't quite get rid of. And for him, it was pretty profound. He was a leper. Now, outside of Israel, this was something that was somewhat negotiable, but for the ancient Israelites, that would have been something that had sentenced him to absolute marginalization. And on some degree, of some level, it was a problem for him. And so the scriptures tell us, and the Syrians had gone out on raids, and it brought back a captive young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, "Thus and thus said the girl who is from the land of Israel." Then the king of Syria said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. Then he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, "Now be advised, when this letter comes to you, that I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy." And it happened, when the king of Israel read the letter, that he tore his clothes, and he said, "Am I God to kill and make alive, that this man sends a man to plead to heal him of his leprosy? Therefore, please consider and see how he seeks a quarrel with me." This was a disaster from the king's perspective. An absolute disaster. Why? Because leprosy cannot be healed. There are situations, there are brokenness that cannot be addressed. There's nothing can be done about this. Absolutely nothing. This is just a pretext for us not to heal him and for the king of Syria to declare war upon us. You think about your life circumstances and you think about how often you have confronted circumstances that you know there's no way out of. There's no healing. I mean, in a certain way, the king's response, perfectly reasonable. Why? Because nobody gets healed of leprosy. Nobody gets past their addiction. Nobody gets past their broken marriage. Nobody gets past their bankruptcy. Or at least that's how it feels. And how it feels may be all there is to reality for some people. That's how it was for the king here. And he acted accordingly. And I wonder sometimes how we act when we're confronted with these impossible circumstances. And it happened when the king of Israel read the letter that he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God?" And in verse 8, so it was when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent to the king saying, "Why have you torn your clothes?" I mean, we think of terror. This was a dramatic thing. "Please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." Then Naaman went with his horses and his chariot, his whole entourage there, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. You got to think of this in terms of like the Secretary of Defense of a superpower. Now, you can think of it in the terms of Pete Hegseth getting on a plane, flying to another nation. He's already been received by the president. He needs a favor from a lower ranking person in that community. And what do you expect? He should be received with all dignity and honor that is due to his position. And Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean." What? The man himself doesn't come out to greet me? You send a minion out to greet me? Because it says Naaman became furious and went away saying, "Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy." You see, I have a certain way that I expect God to behave. I expect things out of God that are reflective of my plans, of my status. I don't think you do that, right? But how often we come to God with our legitimate needs and we tell God, this is the way it's got to be. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? Can I not just do this in a way that I'm comfortable with? So he turned and went away in a rage. Now think about the description of this man. This is a mighty warrior. This is the Secretary of Defense. The king has already thinking, this is going to be bad. And he's going away in a rage. And his servants came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? You see, everybody is ready to do something great for the Lord. All of us here have been conditioned from the time that we could understand that we are to strive for greatness. We're to be the leaders. I mean, you see it in a professional setting all the time. You see it in the church all the time. Seminars on leadership, seminars on being the best possible leader you can be. There are so many seminars on leadership. Where are the seminars for followers? Because it seems like everybody signed up to be a leader. Why? Because we are conditioned to always assert ourselves to the top of the pile. He says to Naaman, listen, look, if you'd been asked to go out and conquer a city, you would have conquered a city. You would have conquered a double city. If you'd been asked to go out and to slay 1,000, you would have killed 10,000. But yet you're asked to do something in humility. You're asked to do something beneath you. So he went down and he dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, and he and all his aides, and came and stood before him. And he said, indeed, now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now, therefore, please take a gift from your servant. What a remarkable change of circumstances that would not have been possible if Naaman had not been willing to humiliate himself. What a change of circumstances that you can draw a straight line to him just simply putting aside his expectations and his pride. And he's healed because of it. In the hours before Jesus' betrayal and execution, we read in John chapter 13 how in that last meal that they had together with his disciples, that meal to celebrate the deliverance of God's people, that Jesus, in the middle of that dinner, got up, wrapped the towel around himself, and then proceeded to go about washing his disciples' feet. And of course, you know how he eventually comes to you. Or I should say, he comes to me. Or was it Peter? I don't know. I get them confused sometimes. And Peter is like, whoa, no, 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 no. You are not washing my feet. You're not going to lower yourself to the position of the lowest servants. Because you see, my God, my Messiah, he don't do that. And Jesus, you need to get your act together. I know it doesn't say that, but it's implied. Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing, you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Now, see, here is a critical point that is central to our experience as believers, okay? Some things you cannot understand until you have committed, okay? You see, because we are inheritors of the Western tradition of scientism, rationalism, reason, it's all got to be explained to us on the front end, or else we're not likely to buy into it. But the scriptures teach a different way of relating to God. Taste and see that the Lord is good, you see. Sometimes to grow in our relationship with God, you just simply have to take him at his word and just do what you're told, okay? Do what you're told. I know every single parent here has said that. And I know, I read recently an article. There's an article that came out of Australia. Maybe you read it this last week, where now parents are being encouraged to ask their child's permission before they change their diapers. Because you want to establish early on with them agency. Okay. All I know is this is somebody who is not a parent, who's either written the article or it's a parent who needs to have the brain lesion diagnosed in their head. Because as parents, there are certain things you just are going to do it, okay? And to a certain degree, when our kids get a little bit older, sometimes you got to tell them, just do it. Just do it, okay? I do not have time to explain to you why I don't want you in the middle of the street with a 18-wheeler barreling down on you. Just step out in faith and come to me, okay? Now, okay, sometimes that's how it is. That's just a fact. That's just sometimes how it is. God, because he condescends to us all the time, much of the time, he's like, okay, I want you to do it for this reason. But sometimes you just got to do it, okay? I'm just saying, you just got to do it. Because you won't understand until after the fact. And so he says to him, that is Jesus to Peter, or actually Peter back to him, says, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, well, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. He's still got the same spirit as Naaman here. I'll go out and do something great. Hey, you're just saying you want to wash my feet? Well, Jesus, listen, if you're just going to wash my feet, why don't you wash my head? Why don't you wash all of me? Because God, you obviously don't know what you're doing. Boy, I just know Jesus would have been exasperated with me at times, okay? I mean, that being exasperated doesn't mean that you're angry. It just means kind of like, oh, please. And Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. Notice they hadn't gone through the foot washing at this point. He says of them, you're clean, but not all of you. So what he is trying to establish for them is a orientation of their hearts. That's what he is trying to achieve here, okay? The washing of the feet is incidental. the thing that he wants is to bring about an orientation change in their hearts. And the best way he, in his wisdom, saw to do it in that particular set of circumstances was, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start washing feet. Because it goes on to say here, so when he had washed their feet, taken his garments, and sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Jesus says to do it, so that's why we do it. Plain and simple, crazy Adventist thing, just do it. Okay? Just do it. Because what's it about? It's about your heart, about the orientation of your heart. That's what it's about. That's the bottom line, what Jesus is wanting to achieve. That's why we do some of these things that we do. It's not because it's necessarily, if you need your feet washed, it's all because you need your heart washed. Okay? And God gives us rituals. He gives us symbols in order to help us to re-ground ourselves, reorient ourselves to reality. Because you got all of culture, you've got all of society telling you one thing. And that is you're number one. And Jesus comes along and says, you know what? The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And unless I am Lord over your heart, you have no part of me. And how do we gauge whether he's Lord over our hearts? Look at how we treat the people around us. It ain't that hard. It's not that hard. We know what our orientation is. We know what our attitude is about those around us. And so that's why we do the foot washing, because Jesus wants to teach us to learn some humility, wants us to struggle with it, wants us to say, is this still relevant? That's what he wants. That's what he wants. So with that much said, we're going to break out of here. We're going to go do some foot washing, okay? Yes, even on your clean feet. I know they're clean already, okay? We have our ladies will be in room 1, men in room 2, families and couples in the fellowship hall. We're going to break out of here in just a moment. We're going to invite the kids to come forward here. And I've been told to tell the kids to come down on the lower level here, on the front row and stuff like that and everything. And then we're going to be back here. But before, we're going to break for a word after this prayer and go do this. Father God, we thank you and we pray, Lord, that we would have the heart of Jesus, a heart of service towards you and towards one another. Lord, let us go down into the waters as Naaman did by faith, trusting and believing in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Once again, ladies room 1, men room 2, families and couples in the fellowship hall. We'll be back here in just a few moments' time. Come on down here, kiddos. We got some stories for you.